Welcome, and thank you for tuning in to Lady K Chat, a podcast that is designed for men and women to become better versions of themselves, which is broadcast every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Various subjects will be spoken upon, such as relationships, health and wellness, personal development, wealth building, children, and so much more. She is a two-time Amazon best-selling author, an international speaker, and life coach. She is Lady K. And now for your host, Lady K.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lady K Chat podcast. You are with your favorite host. Yes, it's me, Lady K. And today I have something very powerful for you. I know the holidays are coming up and a lot of people struggle with this. So I had to talk about it. And a lot of people struggle with their grief because they have lost someone around the holidays and they just do not know how to cope. So today, my guest, she is so fabulous and I'm so appreciative that she is here with me today. Her name is Ms. Jacquelin Maxwell. She is a passionate speaker, a consultant, an author, a coach, an inspirational leader, a transformational coach that helps people transform their minds to change their behavior. And she also, equipped them with the tools and knowledge. Everyone, please help me welcome Dr. Jackie. How are you today, Dr. Jackie?
Hello. How are you?
I am great. I'm so blessed that you are here with me today. I am excited because, again, Dr. Jackie, I know a lot of people are having a tough time around the holidays, and you are the perfect person to be here today just to tell them how to get through certain things. But I just have one question for you, Dr. Jackie, and then you can take the floor because I'm going to let you do this because this is your area. My question to you is, does the hurt and sadness ever go away?
That's an excellent question. So, and thank you for this opportunity. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share with you.
You're welcome.
When we talk about does hurt or sadness go away? Well, I'll say this. Think about the last time that you were happy.
Right.
So as human beings, we were created to have emotions. And there are times when there are emotions of joy, and then there are times of emotions of sadness. So that's really the normal experience that we have as human beings. But what is so very important and where my passion lies is helping people to understand that they might not have the fullness of joy, primarily because they've chosen to not fully understand what happens when we lose or when we have losses in our lives. Yeah. So, for example, when we think of death, or when we think of grief, we often think of death. You know, we think of death, we think of divorce, but especially during this time in which we have experienced the pandemic, you know, the coronavirus, there have been changes in our lives. So what has happened is, as I watch the news, as I watch various reports and listen at young people talk about how they're impacted because they're unable to do the things that they had aspired to do, whether it was attend graduation, proms, go on vacations. When I hear adults talk about not being able to visit parents, go to holiday parties, I realize what is really being discussed is grief. So what is grief? Grief is the normal. It's normal and it's natural. It's the normal and natural experience that we have because of the experiences of loss. Right. So when you say does sadness ever go away? So when there's a loss, we often have many opportunities to share with people, and I do this within my sessions, is we look at what are the myths that lie around grief. Well, we'll say things like, okay, time heals all wounds. Well, if you think about it, yeah, time will pass, but until you actually do something to address that unresolved grief. And unresolved grief usually are the mere expressions that you wish you could have said, or things that you have desired to do, to have done better or more. Working with me, we work through, and I'm a part of the grief recovery method. I'm an advanced grief recovery method specialist with the Grief Recovery Method Institute. So what I do with my clients is that we work through, and it's not a therapy, but it does have therapeutic benefits.
Okay.
But we work through, first of all, what is grief? So as I said, grief is a normal and natural reaction to loss. So if you think about it, Lady K, what happens, and I'll even use this time of year as an example. What happens is, because we have never addressed losses from our past. So now we take the losses from our past. Let's say, for instance, a loss might be that, let's say that your son went away to military and you haven't seen him for several years, and you know that was a major loss.
Right.
Okay. Then let's say it's now 2020, and on top of that loss is the coronavirus, and you've had losses as far as financial losses. You've had losses as far as being able to see family members as you usually have been able to see them. You have losses because you're unable to attend church as you have attended in the past.
Right.
Okay, now we're building, we're going somewhere. So we're compounding those losses on the losses that we've experienced maybe 8 or 9 years ago, when this son left, and you're like, you know, I really miss seeing him, and you know, I know he wants to have his own life and his own family, but you know, here it is, holiday time again, and he's not going to be around the table.
Right.
Okay.
And
So
can I just cut you off
sure.
real quick, because you just don't know right now, you did something so amazing for me. I love how you address the misconception of what loss is, because naturally when people hear the word grief or loss, they just think, oh, someone physically died, but they forget sometimes something can spiritual die. And like you said, a divorce is spiritual death. And yes, there are women and men who are still suffering from the divorce, and they probably moved on with their life, but like you said, they didn't never address it. And that's the key thing. So I just love that you are hitting points, addressing it. And that's one of my biggest things. So I just love that you have to sometimes announce the elephants in the room. And this is why I love doing what I do. And this is why I did introduce the Lady K Chat show, because we're going to address things that you don't want to address, because now is the time. Because if not, you're going to keep grieving, like you just said.
Right. And so what transpires is, so we haven't dealt with those experiences of loss, and we'll talk about why we don't deal with it. And so, but we haven't dealt with those. It's now the holiday season. So some of those losses that we haven't dealt with, there'll be something that kind of triggers, you know, you'll be making some corn pudding, and you think, you know, that's my son's favorite. See, I wish he was here because he loves my corn pudding. You know, it might be something that simple. And then so the holidays, the loss of not being able to see family members, the coronavirus, the social injustices that's going on, and continue to, you know, the heightened awareness, I should say, of those social and racial injustices that are going on.
Right.
When we add all of that on top of each other, that brings about some heavy baggage.
Right.
So why does that happen? You know, I think about it, I look at it like this. So why is it that we are carrying baggage for years? For years. You know, there are times when I've asked people, I said, did you have a loss in your life let's say 10 years ago that you really never addressed?
Right.
And they'll say, well, let me think. Well, yeah. I said, okay. What about 20 years ago? And people in the room will say, well, yeah.
Right. They got to think about it.
And then it's like, so here it is, 20 years later. Now, if you think about it, Lady K, it'll come out, it'll come out at the family reunion, and you're thinking, okay, here she comes, and she's going to talk about, and she still hadn't done anything with that, and it's still as fresh with her as it was back in 2001.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so why is that a problem? Because we are not living the fullness of life that God created us to live.
Absolutely.
When we work through those losses, then we understand and we are able to reclaim our joy.
Right. Right.
As long as we are still, and what brought me to this, to the work that I do, is when I was first introduced to the grief recovery method, I recognized that this would be a good tool for me to also have and knowledge and information. However, I did not realize how much of a transformational experience this would be for my life. So my story is really, as a child, my parents were wonderful parents. However, I had my father, he worked. However, he had challenges with alcoholism. And so at some point, my parents divorced. Well, I still, I got to see my dad, and, I knew who he was. He knew, in my mind, everything was well.
Right.
As time went on, I realized that as I worked on my degree and helping other people and talking to people about changing their lives, and I realized that was an issue, that was an area that I really had personally never done anything about or done anything with. Right. When I was introduced to the grief recovery method many years later, so my parents divorced when I was probably about 12. So fast forward to my age of 43, 44 years old, I'm being introduced to something that's, kind of interesting.
Right.
And I realized I had never dealt with the losses that were associated with father-daughter relationship.
I got to intercede on that, Dr. Jacquelin, if you don't mind. It is so amazing that you said that, because we are so good for that. And we mean well. We're so busy trying to help everybody else, right? Oh, let me tell you this because I'm so educated in this. But when do you help yourself? And like you said, it took you at a mature age to realize you had to tackle your own demons that you was dealing with. So I love that too, how you was able to acknowledge, because a lot of people have not acknowledged that grief part or that loss or that area in their life, and they think, oh, that's nothing, and they don't realize it contributes to a lot of things that's happening all around them, and they're not even aware. So I'm gonna let you go, but I just had to intercede on that.
No, please do. No, I appreciate you saying that, because that's so true. This is an example of we have to put the oxygen mask on ourselves first before we can help anyone.
Absolutely.
And I mean, okay, as leaders, let's look at it from that perspective.
Ooh, yes.
If we're going to lead, if we're going to intentionally lead, we need to, people are looking at us to inspire, to influence, to encourage, and to ignite. That's kind of, typically what people are looking for in a leader.
Absolutely.
If you have so much baggage that you're carrying because of losses that you've never dealt with, it's impossible to be as effective as a leader as you need to be. Intentional leaders intentionally grieve.
Right.
There are over 40 stressors that bring about grief. For example, moving. Now something I didn't say, another part of grief is conflicting feelings when there's any change or shift in familiar behavior. Any change.
That's one more time, Dr. J. I think the people need to hear that again. Say that one more time.
It's any change.
Yes.
And it can be a conflicting thing, and I'll say more about that. But a conflicting experience of any change in a familiar pattern of behavior. Okay? So let's think about it like this. So you have a let's say you have a little girl, and it's like, look at my little girl, she's really growing up. And now you look and it's like, wow, she's getting ready to go to school. Here it is, she's 6 years old or 5 years old, and she's getting ready to go to school. And you're standing there sobbing. And family members like, what's wrong with you? And it's like, I don't know, I'm just sad. Well, that's loss.
I'm guilty of that.
But it's not guilt. It's no need to be guilty. That is your experience.
Right.
The bottom line is that's another example of, and so you have conflicting feelings. One, you're excited because you're proud, but you're also sad because you know that you'll never have her sitting in your lap as a little baby girl again. Or you'll never, there's some things that you have had to accept and be at peace with, that season has ended.
Right.
Lady K.